The trains? What trains?
When it's under 3 minutes, you know, when the train's coming, it says, you know, 4 minutes to come or 5 minutes. When it's under 3, it just says shortly. Because they want it to be like specific.
Hello everyone. Another day, another class. But right up front, I wanted to say something. Today's going to be mainly politics. So if you're not into politics, I don't mind if you leave the classroom right now. You know, maybe you come here for science. Today I got to do a little bit of politics, and I can't avoid it because two or three subjects came up like simultaneously. And I was going to talk about something completely different today, and I just got to leave that for tomorrow. It's just, this is more urgent. So again, if you're not into politics, I don't get offended if you turn off and see me some other day. What is the politics about? Well, you know, science involves both issues. We all want to see the technical part, we could call it, the scientific, the explanatory part of science, of how things work, maybe mechanisms, try to figure out what light is, what gravity is, etc. And then there's the politics of it. You know, the politics involves elbow room, and people have different ideas, and they try to elbow each other out of the road. That's essentially what politics is about in the context of science. It's got to do with imposing your will or your beliefs, your theories, over that of others. Now, there's not much of a problem with that as long as everybody gets to say their thing. That's the way I look at it, at least. You go to the conference, I think everybody should be allowed to give their presentation of what they think is a mechanism or a cause or whatever they've got to offer. I would, like I always say, I restrain or constrain science to explanations and causes, mechanisms. The mathematicians, they have a different version of science, and they say, look, it's measurement, it's equations, it's numbers. Okay, so that's their version. But, you know, if we would go to a conference, I think I would allow them to talk. Give your presentation, and then we fight over it, or we discuss, or disgust, as I say. But I think they should be allowed to talk, and that works in both directions. I think the playing field should be level. Everybody should be allowed to give their talk. We should listen to everybody, even, you know, some of the far-fetched stuff. I have no problem listening to the Electric Universe. In fact, I read quite a bit of the Electric Universe website, what they have in there. I don't agree with any of it, but I do read it. And it's not like, you know, I say, well, I'm not going to read to that nonsense. No. I do read it. I try to find out what they have to say.
Well, the interesting thing
That's my son, Hans, by the way. He's,
hey guys.
That voice is God in the background.
I don't have my own mic, and the mic is facing away from me, so that's why you only hear me in the background.
We only had money for one camera, so he doesn't get one.
But the thing I noticed, the usefulness of letting everyone talk is, there was that one time where you were convinced of a new theory about Earth being used to be a sun, and how at first you told me when you heard about that theory, you said, what are they talking about? But then the more you listened to it, you kind of thought, shit, this might be actually right.
You know, that kind of struck me from the start. I didn't think too much about that one because I liked it from the start.
But you told me that at the beginning it kind of like, it was off-putting.
Maybe.
But I think many people have that
reaction
where they'll look at something which they kind of they superficially know is wrong, but they'll keep listening, and something will catch on and be like, man, maybe they're not right about everything, but they're right about some things, and you kind of pick and choose the things they're right about, and you kind of, the more perspectives you get, I mean, just talking strictly physics,
it widens your horizons.
Yeah, like if you've never heard of, I don't know, flat Earth theory or electric universe,
and at least you have something to compare it against.
Yeah, it gives you something to compare against. Like, okay, is this better than what I think?
Yeah, I think we should hear all theories, and I think that should be the spirit of science.
I mean, there's not that many if you really think about it.
Of course, and with more reason we should listen to all of them, because the few that there are, maybe there's 10 competing theories. Really, if you come to
every subject, like there can't be more than 10 about magnetism, more than 10 about
how many
gravity.
more can you come up with? I mean, maybe I don't even think they reach 10, but let's assume there's 10. We should listen to all 10 of them. You know, I don't care how far out it is. The guy can bring angels if he wants. I don't care. And we should listen to him and say, okay, that's what he believes in, or this is what he proposes. That's fine.
But what I like about even listening to the crackpots, so-called.
You mean the mathematicians?
Even flat earthers. When someone brings flat earth, everyone offhandedly throws them off. But what I like about dissidents, let's call them, because you're also one, really, is they're good at pointing out the flaws in the mainstream ones, and that's the whole reason they choose theirs, is because the mainstream one they're not on board with, and they'll point out some things that
you may have missed.
Off. Yeah, that you may have missed, exactly. Yeah. If they're not good at making their own theories, they're at least good at pointing specific flaws that might have been overlooked in the mainstream theory.
And I think that's the value of listening to all people out there. I have no problem with that. And of course, that's not the status quo. The status quo is censorship. And that's where the politics of it comes in, and that's why politics is so important. Now, why am I bringing this to the fore? Why am I bringing this subject today? Well, something happened today, but something happened even 2 weeks ago, and I thought I'd mention both cases because it's to some degree important. You should keep that as in the background to know, what the context of all this is. And the first case I'll go with is what happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. And this happens with this lady, I don't know, I think she's young, but maybe she's 70 years old for all I know, but I think she's quite young. Her name is Lucy Jackson, and she turned me in. She got so upset at me, and I'm a certified asshole, no doubt about it. But here I was being objective, not assholey. And I got beat up anyways. And she said the following, and I'm just summarizing here. You can see this in a Quora article that I wrote. Say, is time dilation real, or something like that? It's one of the last ones that I wrote. I wrote it in July. Anyways, she wrote the following. She says, I see concepts of time dilation, time travel often being exposed by one scientist or another. Exposed. And I answered to her, no scientist believes in the nonsense of time dilation or time travel. I was referring to the fact that it's mathematicians, not true scientists, who believe in this. That was my sarcastic comment to her, and I had a few sarcastic comments, and then she also wrote, time can seemingly move backwards. This is a scientific model, nothing else. She says it's just a model, nothing else. Einstein explained time and space are modes in which we think, not conditions in which we live. His model of reality, not set in stone. And that blew my mind up, because Einstein's relativity has been proven forevermore and is here to stay until we all die. I mean, it's ground in stone. And I can only encourage you to publish one article anywhere where you criticize relativity or quantum. Only then will you feel in your skin whether Einstein's ideas regarding time are set in stone. But those are not the ones that, I guess, that pissed her off. First, I used the word delusion, and it was not intended for her. It was, I used it in general terms. Again, if you see my comments, I think you'll understand that. I was using the word delusion, and I'm saying, people who believe in all this stuff like time travel and God and so on are delusional. Well, I guess that touched a nerve, and she didn't like that very much. The fact that I used delusional, she said it's ad hominem. And so I had to go in there and explain to her that words like idiot are in the dictionary, and words like delusion are also in the dictionary, and they have a meaning. And these words say, that if you're not commonsensical, if you have irrational ideas, right, then you are an idiot or you are delusional. And people don't like being called idiots or delusional, okay, because they take it as an ad hominem comment.
What's ad hominem?
Ad hominem is the Latin phrase saying that you're attacking the person and not the theory, not the thing that
we talked about last week.
More or less, you're attacking the person. But see, I'm not using it in that sense. I want to put it in the right context so that people understand. If I call someone an idiot, and I first define the word because I do have it defined in several places, and it's essentially the meaning that you'll find in the literature, in the dictionary, and that is that it's a person who has like an irrational thought, an irrational way of thinking. And then I obviously had to define the word rational and irrational. And I'm saying, look, if you're using concepts as objects, if you don't have definitions or use them inconsistently, if your theory doesn't follow from the hypothesis, from your assumptions, then we have a problem. You have inconsistency, and that's irrational. So I define that as well. And so when I apply this objectively, people take it very ad hominem-like. They say, you're attacking me personally. No, I'm using it objectively. But, it's very hard for people to understand that at first thought.
I don't know, but I think I'm on her side, because if you call someone something, by definition, it's ad hominem.
Yeah, but the issue is the following.
Not calling the theory idiotic is different than calling the person an idiot.
Yeah, but if you call the theory idiotic, people will anyways take it, oh, you're saying that I'm an idiot. Yeah, they'll take it as that.
But a lawyer will come and say,
but
not, I didn't call you an idiot,
But see, this is that fine line where you say the theory is idiotic or delusional. I mean, what are you going to say for delusional? You get a delusion is a word that applies to the person, not to the theory.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like I believe in something which is irrational, so I'm delusional. It's not the theory that's delusional. The theory could be idiotic, but you're the person who's delusional.
But then I think in science, just don't use the word delusional.
Yeah, but see, this is the issue. The issue is that if you use the word delusional, yes, obviously you're referring to the person who believes in such an irrational theory. But the question is the following. If you define irrational and you say, look, this is what I mean by irrational. Any person who believes in something that is irrational is delusional. You're again being objective. You're just using definitions. And if people say, oh, you're saying that I'm delusional. No, I'm saying, look, if a person, any person, third person, world, anyone on the planet believes in an irrational theory, they're delusional.
Yeah, but
and that's different than saying you are delusional.
Yeah, but I think just don't talk about people ever. I think that's the scientific way to go about it. Just never talk about people or delusional or idiotic theories, maybe.
Yeah, and
irrational theories is probably cleaner.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Anyways, the last, there were several comments, but the last one says, some phenomena exist which one might call God, this is what she was saying, while putting aside primitive ideology. She was referring to the fact that, in the Old Testament, for example, or, in the old days, people believed in this human-type God, the guy who created the universe and molded man from clay and so on. And I'm saying, again, I'm referring really to my definitions, and I'm saying, anyone who believes in some of these irrational thoughts is delusional. Well, I guess she took it personally. I wasn't referring really to her. I had no intention, obviously, from my point of view, I had no intentions whatsoever of offending her. But it turned out that way, and she turned me in. She called you Cora and said that I was being nasty, or I don't know what she might have said, but Cora didn't do anything about it, because if you read my whole comments, I think you would see that I was simply being objective. I wasn't attacking her personally. In fact, it was not my intention under any circumstance to attack her. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was saying, look, a person who thinks in these weird things is delusional, or a person who believes is irrational. And that's the way I was taking it. That's not the way she took it.
But to be fair, we do shit on some mathematicians here personally.
Constantly.
I don't know about personally, because the personal part kind of comes in more like when you bring up Mother Nature. It's kind of more poetic on that side. We
Okay.
kind of criticize more of the theories, and then we extrapolate, oh, this guy's an idiot.
Yeah.
But I think it's correct to stick to criticizing theories rather than people.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I guess it's part of my character. I'm a very
That's just
sarcastic.
But that's
I'm
the
a
point.
very sarcastic person.
But that's the point. It's human nature, and what's our motto? No human nature, only nature.
Well, my motto is we teach with a baseball bat.
Yeah, but we beat up the theory, not the people.
Well. Yeah, you beat up the people to... one of the reasons I do it, I do it really to have fun. But one of the reasons I do it, sometimes people think it's business as usual because they haven't really penetrated with their mind what you're talking about, and they think, oh, okay, I've heard this before.
It's like
this is business as usual. And you got to really whack them and to say, look, I'm saying something different. Wake up from your hypnotism.
It's like the climate change guys that think that you're on their side.
Yeah.
Like, no.
You got to whack them.
You have to call him an idiot just to wake him up.
I had this problem with this guy McPherson. These people say, yeah, he's on our side. He thinks the end of the world is coming. Yeah, I think it is, but for a totally different reason. These people talk about the climate change and, the polar bears being left in smaller icebergs every day. And I'm saying that's got nothing to do with it. It's going to be our economy. I'm not saying you should believe what I'm saying. I'm saying let's get it right. Let's get what I'm saying right. These people are confused completely.
It kind of goes back to the politics censorship thing. This is a weird form of censorship where you speak your mind, but it goes under the radar.
Yeah, because people don't see it.
So you kind of have to use this weird politics, called insult, to kind of wake them up so they can actually listen to your theory.
Okay, so should I use this in politics?
Sparingly. Please use sparingly.
So yeah, this is the issue. The issue is sometimes you got to whack them to wake them up because people don't read. They read, but they don't understand. It doesn't process in their brain. They say, "Oh yeah, I've heard this before. Oh, this is the same as always."
I guess that's the thing.
And I'm saying no. This is something new. I mean, the rope hypothesis is something totally different. But people say, "Oh, I've heard this before." Yeah, fields.
In a way, it's kind of how do you call it?
What?
It's kind of like you're doing it for attention, but that kind of sounds bad, like you're like an attention whore, but it's not really that. It's like you kind of need to get their attention so that they'll listen to a new theory. So you have to do these weird kind of, insults or like get their attention in that
whack
way.
them, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta whack them or throw mud or something like, hey, hello, this is a new theory.
Yeah,
So
and they think it's not.
It's hard to get people to actually listen. And in an ideal world, you could just speak scientifically, just normally, and everyone listens, and it's like, okay, then they can take it or leave it. That's besides the point. But in the world we actually live in, to get people's attentions, I mean, marketing is $1 trillion business
And
just to get people's attention.
Yeah.
So attention is a very big
maybe I should talk in the background and put a beautiful girl here, and you would probably appreciate that a lot more.
The best description I've heard of marketing is they call it the devil's science.
The devil's science.
The devil's science, because it's basically about human nature and what catches eyeballs.
I see.
I think someone said that the marketers know humans better than anyone else does because they basically study that.
No, they have to study it because it's their bread and butter.
Yeah, it's their bread and butter. So they have to literally know what gets your attention.
Not on top of the computer.
They literally have to study what gets people attention, what are people interested in, exactly what you'd think the devil does,
Yeah, and the second reason, I mentioned this today, bring politics into the fore, is because I have a wide new audience, apparently, or a potential wide new audience that is going to buy into the rope hypothesis. And it's coming out of the blue. I have 3 sons, and I love all 3 of them. I love them with all my heart, really, I do. But this guy, the guy on the other side of the bench here, he's quite an intelligent guy. He's more than intelligent. He's a prophet. He's a prophet. I mean, if you're into astrology,
Preach.
If you're into astrology, he can predict the day you were born. So if you need that kind of stuff, he's excellent for it. I mean, I do science, but he does astrology. He said the other day that
like a month ago.
like a month ago, he said, You know, the people that will buy into the rope model are, you know, people who, like the Buddhists, maybe the Hindus, you know, people who talk about one with the universe, that we're all connected. And so I want you to meet the new followers that I have, you know, and this is what they look like, okay? Here you got them. That's it. Those are my new followers, the Hare Krishnas. Yeah, these people are one with the universe. They talk about the interconnectedness of everything. And what better interconnectedness can you come up with than the rope hypothesis that suddenly says, look, all atoms are interconnected. These people will love the shit. And it turns out that the folk who talk about interconnectedness, generally the Eastern religions, you know, they my son said the following. He says, you know, all these people, they're looking for, you know, we call them religion, and they are religion, really. And we say, well, that's religion, and that's supernatural, and that's, we don't give a damn about that. We, the scientists, we have it properly. You know, we do things methodically. We have equations to back us up. We do research. We can't go wrong. We develop technology. We can't go wrong. And so what's the issue? The issue is that imagine now the world turned upside down for a second. Just for a second, okay? Imagine the world in which religion suddenly overtakes science. And you say, Bill, you're full of shit. Listen 1 second, okay? What if religion were to overtake science? What if science suddenly becomes irrational in the minds of people and religion becomes rational?
No, but
hold
on, real quick. It's not religion, it's spiritualism.
Okay. Well, I call it religion. Anyways, the point is the following. What if Buddhism and Hinduism, at least those two, maybe even Christianity, were to make a comeback and step on science and show that it is science that has become religious,
using the rope model,
whereas religion is now more rational? And what am I referring to? What if you compare a guy like, you know, I don't know, Stephen Hawking, Einstein, Niels Bohr, any of those, just Richard Feynman, whoever you want to, you bring any of those in here, right? These guys have authority. They're scientists. They're confirmed scientists. They have Nobel Prizes or Wolf Prizes or whatever prize. They've got all these medals. And now you got, you know, some Hare Krishna out there. You know, he comes in there with his tambourine and his fancy clothes, you know, shaved completely. I'm getting there, naturally.
Not by choice.
Natural, I'm becoming a Hare Krishna day by day. But anyways, what if you bring one of these guys, right? And what happens? This guy says, look, I'm more rational than you are. See, we've been saying all along for 2,000 years that the universe is interconnected. And here we have a new theory, right? A new version of the universe in which all atoms are interconnected now. And what are you guys saying? You guys are saying what? That, you know, this object throws little electrons or little photons on another and pulls it inwards? That's irrational. But look at us. We're saying something rational. We're saying the universe is interconnected because all atoms are interconnected. Now, for whatever use they're going to use that, you know, whatever purpose they're going to use that for spirituality or whatever, I don't care. I'm saying, what if you give this tool to establish religions such as, you know, Buddhism and Hinduism, and let them do the fighting for you?
I think
what if they go out there and beat up the Cambridge and Harvard specialists?
I'm literally thinking that's exactly what's going to happen.
That's why this guy's so smart.
It's literally going to be the spiritualists who talk about, you know, being one with the universe, who have always been kind of I don't know about losing, but let's say losing, at least in the layman's eyes, they've been losing the scientific fight, the logical
in the last
fight,
400 years for sure.
the rational fight. You know, the scientists kind of, okay, there's science and then there's religion. You know, religion is kind of woo woo, fancy, ghosty stuff,
and people recognize,
science,
oh, that's religion.
Yeah, that's religion, or that's spiritualism. Chakras opening your third eye and stuff. That's cool and all.
That's Deepak Chopra
for meditation or whatever.
Who says
better.
Who says God is intelligence? By the way,
yeah, but they're really talking about bettering yourself as a human being.
Correct.
How to live is different than what is life, or what is the reality.
Objective reality.
Objective reality.
Things matter.
So and everyone from scientists to spiritualists, I mean literally everyone is trying to, even professors are trying to consolidate science and religion, or science and spiritualism, whatever you want to call it. And I think everyone's
the spiritual kind of, with a matter world.
And I think everyone's kind of been yearning for this because, as I was saying, everyone kind of separates the two because they're you can't consolidate the two. It's like science is one thing and religion or spiritualism is the other. So we have magic,
irrationality and rationality.
Yeah, it's like not really irrationality,
well,
but it's
that's
like,
what I call it.
That kind of goes along with it. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I mean, the way you call it is irrationality and irrationality.
I divide in rational and irrational.
No, you make them both irrational because you say even science is irrational today.
No,
that's besides
not
the point.
Science.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, not science.
I'm talking
Mathemagics.
Yeah, but that is science nowadays.
Oh yeah.
So right now, it's both irrational for you. But what I'm saying is,
that's true.
The irrationality isn't really the part. It wasn't really the strength, the strong suit of the spiritualists. Really, it was how to live. They know. I mean, they speak in metaphor and feeling, but their focal point is how to live better, not to explain the natural world. I mean, they do that, but really, it's always in this weird metaphor kind of language. I've watched a lot of videos of it, and people always separate the two, the science and religion. But now, if the spiritualists kind of get a hold of this rope hypothesis, which literally combines science and spiritualism, at least the being one with everything part. This, you are the universe. I mean, even scientists say that, where you're made of atoms that came from a galaxy and stuff. Everyone kind of likes that.
Or from a star, yeah.
Yeah, everybody kind of likes that,
that connection with the universe, with the cosmos.
And all of a sudden we can say, yeah, that's true.
That's true.
Literally.
Literally.
You're literally attached to every atom in the universe. I was like an hour ago, I was in the kitchen and a fly was going by, and the thought just occurred to me, I'm attached to every atom in that fly. It's so weird. Like, just out of nowhere, I'm like, oh, that's just weird. But the spiritualists, if they take this, I mean, it's gonna happen for sure. They're gonna take this, and now they've been losing this rational or logical fight for a century at least. Now they're gonna have this to come at the scientists, at least the contemporary mathematical scientists, and say, hey, this actually makes sense, and it's kind of what we've been saying all along.
Right.
And they can actually kind of fight back on the logical, rational side, and I think that's what's gonna finally kind of bring this awareness to people, where it's like everyone's gonna look around and be like, okay, hold on, how are the spiritualists winning the rational side? I thought that was the strong suit of the scientists. How things are is what we go to the scientists for, not the spiritualists. And if the spiritualists start winning the argument essentially on the logical side, then people are gonna start wondering, okay, well, hold on, something's wrong here. Something's wrong with science. Science has deviated. Science isn't science.
Yeah, and to put it in another context, which is also important to keep in mind, in the 19th century you had people like Hegel and Marx. And Hegel was Marx's teacher, by the way. He was a German philosopher. And Hegel came up with this notion that there were conflicting philosophies, and they ended up in what he called a dialectic philosophy, where you have different ideas clash. And Marx took that and he transformed it in dialectic materialism, where you have clashes of something a little more real. You have a clash of workers, of interests, in real life, of workers against their bosses. Those who govern. And so you have the grassroots, the people, against the people who govern. the smaller group, and there's going to be a clash, he said, and there was going to be a fight. And of course, he said, you know, the people who are going to triumph are the workers, and they're going to take over. They're going to create this paradise.
Marx said that.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you know, it's the dictatorship of the proletariat. It's the stepping stone to a world type of government where everybody is equal, and from each according to his needs, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs, and so on. And so there's this clash of ideas, and there's a synthesis that comes out of it. That's what Hegel said. And imagine now the new revolution, the one that could happen, and might even happen still, within the 21st century. This is stuff for the maybe millennials, the Z generation folk, in which now they take this synthesis between science and religion and finally make one whole out of it and say, look, let's take the best parts of this and create this synthesis, which we can live with. And
pretty cool.
Yeah, and what are we saying here? We're saying, well, you know, religion, at least some of the Eastern religions primarily, right? They had this idea that there's this interconnectedness in the universe. And science says, no, look, everything's discrete. We got discrete particles running everything. And so there's a clash of foundations, of assumptions about the invisible world out there. And you know, the one that's probably going to triumph, you would think, but I don't know if this is going to be the case. But you would think that the one that's going to triumph is the one that can unite the universe. People like that idea. I think that's the one that's going to have the upper hand eventually. In whatever time we have left, as you know my theory about extinction of the human race, but
we haven't gone too deep into it. But
okay, but
that's
yeah,
next week.
Yeah, yeah. But the point here is that, you know, maybe some people might look at this and say, look, there's something of value here for us, even though it doesn't have to do too much with science or with what should be. You know, it's could be just that they appropriate or expropriate for their own purposes, for their own well-being or their satisfaction or whatever. And that alone creates a revolution in which science has to rethink itself and say, oh, hold it, look, maybe we're wrong.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I want to see. I want to see science be science again, because right now science is just its own religion, and everyone kind of feels that. Everyone kind of feels that.
Yeah. Someone's
talking about Big Bang, it's like everyone kind of shuts down a part of their brain, the rational part, and say, oh yeah, Big Bang's pretty cool.
And one of the problems here, this is becoming, you know, science is becoming a lot like the Kardashians. You see them every day, and they're all nude, and they show their bodies and so on. You get so many stories about them, people just get sick of it after a while. So is there anything else out there? And science is more or less, or mathematics as I call it, is more or less in the same ballpark. Every day they talk to you about what? The Higgs, because the Higgs is now, you know, very very popular, it's very much in the minds of the mathematicians. They talk about black holes, they talk about dark matter, they talk about the Big Bang, you know, and the same thing over and over and over and over, and you don't see anything else.
And none of it makes sense.
None of them. Yeah, so, people say, you know, I don't understand, so I don't even listen to any of that because I don't understand.
That's the important part, though.
Yeah.
Because it makes no lick of sense, or better said, it's too complicated. Like, assuming it were true, it's too complicated.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'm not gonna, you know, spend 4 years. It's kind of like I'm not gonna learn. Yeah, I'm not gonna learn, you know, doctoring, you know, anatomy just as a hobby, as a side thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's on that level.
It's for specialists.
Yeah, it's for specialists. It's like to learn physics, everyone in the head. I mean, it's even beyond, you know, doctoring or lawyering. It's like, okay, that's some really crazy stuff. Only if I go to the university for 8 years, right, will I even get an inkling of understanding. So why bother? I'll just kind of deal with the stuff that I have to deal. You know, pay my bills, go to work, the human stuff.
It's one of the things that keeps the mathematicians out there in a high pedestal, because people say, oh man, he studied all this stuff, he's beyond me, I envy him, or, you know, I worship him because, you know, he's got all this knowledge and I'm just a poor peon that marches punches his card every day.
I don't understand any of it.
I don't understand
any of it. So
right,
it must be complicated. This guy must be really
right.
smart.
So they think of these guys as geniuses simply because they deal with all these fancy words and so on.
Weird.
And that alone makes them into authority.
But it's such a weird phenomenon.
And puts it beyond the reach of normal humans.
But for sure, it's like 1-to-1. It's exactly what happened in the Middle Ages with religion.
Yeah.
Where you have these,
priests interpreting the Bible for you.
They're like, oh man, these guys are really smart. They actually know how to read God's word, and I just kind of have to take their word for it.
No, in the
so
Catholic Church,
you can't read the book yourself.
The Catholic Church forbid you to read the book because you're not gonna understand.
Yeah, you're gonna corrupt the word of God.
You want to understand it? Go to Sunday school. And the guy up there, at the pulpit, he's gonna make sure you understand it, okay? And that's the way it is now.
It's like you're gonna read the Bible yourself, but you're not gonna interpret it the right way. So you're corrupting the Word of God.
Right, right. And this is more or less the same thing because the mathematicians, they say, look, we're the only guys who can do the equations. You don't do equations. I do equations, okay? And
or go to the university 8 years and then you'll.
Obviously, and the guy realizes that I don't think you.
It's more like a threat. like you want. It's like 8 years in jail, just to get on the same level playing field.
8 years in jail. I like that. But so what happens? People put him up there in a pedestal automatically, and they say, look, this guy's a genius. If he knows all this stuff, he can deal with all this stuff. He must be, out of this world. He's got a bright mind.
But then there's no discussion because now we're just talking about authority.
Not discussion. I think there's no communication between the mathematicians and people down south. What are we talking about? We're saying this guy is doing math. He does that in his little office at Cambridge or Harvard, wherever he works, and he comes out and he can't give you math. He can't give you an equation because you're not going to understand it. So he says, look, let me interpret it for you. Imagine it's sort of like this, or let me give you an analogy. It's more or less like this. Look, we take this rubber sheet, we put a ball in it, and the other guy falls into the ball. That's more or less what we're saying. And you're saying, well, are you saying that space is a physical object that? Well, see, to really understand, you got to take a course in college.
But that's why.
So that's when they cut you off and they say, look, unless you really take a course, an advanced course in mathematics in college, you will not really understand it. All I can do is bring it down to your level, to your puny ant-level brain, and try to feed you this nonsense, and that's the best way you can relate to it. That's the way it's done. And so there is really no communication between the people in the physics departments and the people, the normal human beings out there. And so when you find a rational human being, a rational human being among the grassroots, among the population, they may not be experts in math, but they say something's wrong with it. Intuitively, something's wrong here. I don't understand it.
Even feel that.
Right, and so they start protesting, and they say, "Look, I think you're wrong." And so there's this revolution brewing in the masses among people who disagree with all this, and they say, "Look, what do you mean? You mean after all these years, you're telling us that the universe did have a beginning? It started from nothing." All by itself. This time we're getting rid of God. There's no God. It just started all by itself. And people say, I have a problem with that. And say, well, you got to study math to understand what we're talking about. But it turns out you don't need math because what they're saying is, if you rewind the tape, you get to a singularity. And so conceptually, I don't care what math they use. I don't really give a damn about their equations. Conceptually, something's wrong. Because you're saying I cannot imagine self-creation.
They're essentially doing creationism without God. That's it.
Correct. That's all they're
doing. Without the dude with the wand.
And to say that, this is now the new science, a lot of people question that. And so they have qualitative type of questions.
It goes back to what we said at the beginning, where the people who are criticizing those flaws are the so-called crackpots.
Yeah.
Are religion, flat earthers,
because you haven't fallen in with a.
They go, what do you mean Big Bang? Like it just created out of nothing? You're just doing what we say, only without God, which is just weirder.
Yeah. And this is where.
But that's why I love combining the spiritualism with science, with the rope hypothesis, because it kind of puts everything into perspective. It kind of makes. Whether you believe that God is the one that created the ropes, that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
That's another level on top. we can have a discussion about that some other day. But the fact that we can actually make sense of the universe conceptually, and it's like we can have our cake and eat it too. We can have our sense, and it's also cool that we are attached to everything.
Yeah, and everybody can take whatever they want out of it. I mean, if people, I know at least 2 guys out there who have put the rope together with God, and to them it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me. I have no room for God in the rope hypothesis, but somehow they managed to blend them both in. And they like the rope, and they like God, and maybe it's their upbringing, maybe they've got it deep inside them, they can't get rid of God. And so they put them together, and they have no problem living with that. Well, that's their perspective, that's their way of seeing things, and I have no problem with that. That's their issue. But my point is, if the guy can come in there and say, look, the rope surpasses and beats the hell out of the particle, I think that revolution
is inevitable.
Well, inevitable, and that's desirable. I think we need to get rid of the particle and the wave. We need to get rid of those two.
The way I see it is, I mean, I don't really think about the rope theory or gravity or physics at all. It's more like a fun fact in the back of your mind. Like, it's just nice to make sense of the universe whenever you kind of think about it.
Yeah.
Because whenever everyone's looking up at the stars, most people have no clue about what they're looking at or how to make sense of any of it. But I kind of look up and go, I mean, it sounds kind of douchey, but I kind of look up and go, man, it's nice to have a rational theory to kind of make sense of our place and everything that's going on. But it's more like just like a fun fact. It's not like every day. I have no use for the rope hypothesis.
And science is not supposed to be useful.
That's the thing. But that's
it's
the
just
thing.
for philosophy.
I think that's why it's cool just to have something to make sense of the science part of it, especially for the spiritualists, so that they can stick to their spiritualism and also have
a scientific basis
for it. Exactly. Because the rope hypothesis doesn't cancel out that awe that everyone feels.
Yeah.
Like, assuming it is all ropes, it's still awesome. Like, it's still crazy that is how it is.
Yeah. Imagine one thing, now that you mentioned that, imagine Mach's principle. And you're looking at the stars out there, and you're seeing little dots, and now making a little more sense out of it and saying, to think that every atom in that star is connected to me. Yeah. You know, that already is an awesome feeling. It's the sense that, you know, why Newton's bucket? You know, Newton's bucket, you twirl it around, it tends to go to the side. You say, and Newton said this, you know, 400 years ago. He says, why does the water climb up the bucket? And he says, they're being pulled from the stars. But how can that possibly be? And Mach came in there in the 19th century. I don't think he was exactly the guy who came up with all the little details, but he was credited with it. And again, it's got to do with Newton's bucket. And Mach said something like, you know, we're being pulled from every star. And now we take that concept, right, and we mix it in with Buddhism, Hinduism, or whatever out there, Hare Krishnas, put them together and say, look, you are being pulled by the stars. Mm-hmm. And science doesn't have a problem with that, because, you know, everybody says in science, right, and we're talking about now mathematics, everybody says, look, the galaxies are pulling on you. We are gravitationally pulled by the moon. And the moon is 1.5 light seconds away. And we're being pulled by the moon. How can that possibly be if there's nothing in between? Well, now we're saying, let's fill in the blanks.
It also kind of adds to the spiritualism that we're all connected. I mean, I'm literally connected to you.
Oh, you are. I know. And it was his umbilical cord was also connected to his mother.
Mom's, though. Yeah, we were a little more. We were connected by a little bit more, but it's like it kind of gives. It's a good theory for humanism, for politics, because if
it gives you a foundation, a basis to have that theory.
But it's also for empathy and stuff, because if you're walking down the street and you see another person there, you're literally connected to that person.
I can't kill him because he's connected to me.
I mean, you can, but it's like you still have to be aware that is what's going on. It's like you are connected to that person, literally, I mean, we are by economic
and some people
and culture and all that, but you're literally connected to the other person. Like,
and some people extrapolate from that our brains are connected, and I'm sending waves through these ropes to the other guys.
That'd be pretty cool too, but
teleportation,
Not teleportation. Telekinesis.
No, I know, but teleportation as well. I'm saying that this guy says, oh, now I can see how teleportation can work. I can move things around because I'm connected to that little rock that I'm going to move from one side of the room to the other.
No, that's not teleportation. That's telekinesis. You got to get your superpowers straight.
Oh, okay.
There's teleportation, telekinesis, telepathy.
Yeah, but I guess you can make.
You gotta get all the tellers right.
You can get Star Trek, quite well. You can send Mr. Spock down to the planet because now you have a physical way of getting him down there instead of using magic. Now you've got a physical way maybe of getting him down there, whether that's true or not. But let me put it into concept before I lose track here. Where did I get all this stuff? Well, we have this gentleman. His name is Antonio Sebastian, and he's Spaniard, and I guess he lives in Great Britain because he speaks perfect, fluid British English. And he puts this in his website. What you see there, it says electron shell magnetic tension, bidirectional torsion, and he's got convergence of the electromagnetic rope from all atoms in the universe, and expansion contraction of the rope gives you light. Now all this sounds familiar. I don't know where I've seen this before, but it rings a bell. I don't know. And here's another one from him. He says he shows this magnetic thread, electric thread, atom, electron shells, and electromagnetic ropes. And again, I don't know why all of this rings a bell.
How does this guy have better pictures than you do? That's my question.
Okay, so this guy contacted me about, I think it was maybe 2 months ago now. I thought it was maybe a month, maybe it's 2 months, I don't know. And he contacted me and he began criticizing me, not for my theory, not for what I'm proposing. He criticized me because I use baseball bat therapy, and he doesn't use. He's a kinder gentleman than me. I'm a certified asshole. I'm a sarcastic kind of guy, and people don't always take that very nicely. As I said with this Lucy Jackson girl, she didn't take that nicely. Some people can't read between the lines, and so they take it personally and whatever. And this guy came more or less from the same angle. He says, you're beating people up. You're going around about it the wrong way.
Kind of like you're right, but you're being a douche about it.
Right, I'm being a douche about it. And the way I can only tell you the way I look at it. First of all, I'm sick and tired of the mathematicians. Second, when I came out of prison, I was beaten up very badly by the mathematicians. And I came out as Mr. Nice Guy. I came out of there as, hey, look, guys, I have a new theory, and maybe you want to look at it and compare, and I came out very nicely, and they just treated me like shit completely. They said, you're an idiot, you should take math and blah blah blah. And I said, what the hell is this, a scientific environment? I thought you could present things and people would say, well, let's look at your theory, and no, we don't agree with it for this reason or that. No, it was all ad hominem completely. And
well, if you can't crush the theory, crush the person.
Yeah, I mean, they treated me like shit. And just in case, I went to other sites, and I was always treated really bad. And I'm saying, is this a scientific environment? So, I got sick of that, and, I said, I'm going to use baseball bat therapy myself. I just went out there with a baseball bat, and I'm good for that. No one beats me at that, believe me. I think I'm pretty good with baseball bat therapy. And I'm not going to change my ways, partly because I believe we're close to the end of the world. I'm not sure anything is going to change very much. And so, in a way, I have nothing to lose. That's the way I look at it, at least. Second, I'm close to retirement. I don't know if I'll go to north or south, but I'm close to retirement. So, I'm not worried about what people think of me anymore. And so I try to be not so much mean and sarcastic and so on, but I want to be objective. So when I go out there, I try to be above all objective, as objective as I can, and I am still subjective within that framework. But I try to be objective, and not everybody understands that, and so that's when I bring up the baseball bat and start batting them over the head. And this guy came from that direction. He says, you're being too mean with people, and so. And I told him why. I said, I don't apologize when I'm being censored by the mathematical establishment. When I go out there and try to talk to them, they don't want to talk to me. You can't submit a paper for them to consider because all the peers, all these monks, hooded monks, because they're all anonymous, they are all relativist mechanics or string theorists, which is all the same group. And so it's like an atheist sending, a paper to the Vatican and saying, look, I'd like to publish this where I'm saying, God doesn't exist. Well, all the cardinals will meet out there and they'll just tear it to pieces. And you'll never get published. And that's what's happening here as well. And so I have no apology. I don't apologize absolutely for anything.
I remember Googling your name once just to see what came up. And I saw a whole bunch of...
Anything nice?
It was forums of mathematicians. I mean, a lot of these. And it was all shitting on your character, not the theory. It was just like you said, it was just all in hominem, like, this guy's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's talking about. They didn't talk about the theory at all. The best they said was, it needs more investigation. That's the best.
And those were the most moderate guys.
All of them were just shitting on you. I'm like, holy... I mean, I thought the same thing. Are these scientists? Are these rational people? But that's why I'm very careful not to make the same mistake. That's why I'm careful and not to do ad hominem, kind of like you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of want to avoid shitting on people as much as you can so that we can get to the science. Like, what are we actually talking about? Then we can shit on each other at the party at the after party.
In a way, it's vengeance. It's a way of getting back at all these people. Like, I've got nothing to lose. I don't care if they shit on my name or whatever, but I want to beat them up before I leave. I want to say what I have to say to them. And I have no respect whatsoever for a person who went to college in 10 years and comes out believing in black holes and dark matter, or Big Bang, or particles of mass, and zero-dimensional Higgs bosons, or whatever. I have no respect for these people. And so I don't treat them with any respect. Well, I prefer to say that I treat them with the respect that they deserve. I think that's the correct way of putting it.
Yeah, but you also have to be careful with that, because if you just come in from the get-go shitting on them and calling them insults, it's like, okay, that's
I don't
nice.
insult them.
That's nice and all, but can we get to the science?
I don't insult them. I qualify them correctly with the only English available in the dictionary.
I mean, it's also corrupted by the fact that it's all done over the internet, which is kind of the playground for insults and ad hominem and crapping on the person instead of what they're saying. You'll never just see, like, any debate, any religious, otherwise, doesn't matter. Any debate in the comment section always devolves into personal attacks. Well, after like one or two comments.
Well, you know what? In great measure, because a lot of people, or most people, 99% of people, don't do any research. They don't do any investigations over theory. They want to have opinions, and most people just have opinions. And they base a lot of their opinions, or form their opinions, based on what they read in the popularization, because they don't have time to look into detail, like in the specialized magazines or journals, to find out what research has actually been done. Today I was mentioning a case to my son that, I have a couple of aloe vera plants here, and I was reading yesterday that, you can eat these plants, these leaves. They've got this juice in them, and it's
jelly.
Yeah, it's like a jelly, and it's quite thick, and so I was saying, is it possible to eat this plant? Because the other day I got some in my mouth. It was bitter, and I thought for a moment, what if this stuff is poisonous? So I went in there and washed my mouth as soon as possible. And then I said, well, is this poisonous or not? I don't know. And so I went there yesterday and did a little research and found out that, these guys saying it's poisonous, that it could cause cancer. And I said, oh shit, it's a good thing I got it off my mouth. And then I read a little more and found out in another place that It's absolutely good for you. It's healthy. It helps lubricate your bones. And you know, I've got problems with arthritis several years now. And this guy's saying it's good for the bones, and I'm saying, well, hold it. Who is right here? Does this cause cancer on the one hand, or is it good for you because it said it's almost the only plant that's got vitamin B complex in it, and it just gave all these wonderful things about aloe vera, and so you start wondering, you know, who is right? Is this going to kill you or help you? You know, you don't know.
Yeah, but every single, I mean, the health
health
world has
lately has ballooned.
Holy crap! Nutrition, exercise. There's so much debate, and I think the way I told you earlier is the best way that you can summarize it. Is that someone on Earth knows, but nobody knows who knows.
Right, and nobody does the research anyways to find out what papers have been published.
No, but even if they do, there's too many published, so you don't know which one to take.
Yeah, but I don't think people go even that far.
But
people
even
don't
if
go.
they did, it wouldn't help.
Okay, fine. But what I'm saying is people don't go to the journals. They seek some information like very superficial. When I want to know something real deep, I go in there and spend lots of time on it because I really want to get to the bottom of it. And you know, I wrote this book about the Neanderthals, and you know, I really did quite a bit of research on that and got my own idea of what happened to the Neanderthals. And likewise, you know, when I looked at this aloe vera, you know, I'm saying I don't know what to think now, and I got to do more research because I don't know if I'm going to be dying because I'm starting to, you know, take some of that aloe vera in my mouth. I want to test it for myself, but I don't want to die tomorrow.
That's the thing. You have to try everything for yourself.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. But before
so
hold it. But before you do that, it'd be wise to know all the, you know, like when the doctor says, well, the doctor says take this pill, and you say, okay, doc, but you know, is this gonna kill my liver or whatever? Well, you should be careful. You know, if you take too much of it, maybe it's going to hurt your, you know, your heart, your
buyer
liver,
beware.
and so you don't know whether to eat the whole pill or not, half the pill or whatever. You don't know what to do.
You just kind of dip your toe, see what's going on.
Am I allergic to it? I mean, I don't know, you know. And so all this stuff comes into your mind.
It reminds me of something I told a friend of mine because we were talking about the health benefits of coconuts. But that's all. I mean, that one's kind of unanimous. There's very few people who say coconuts are unhealthy.
Okay.
But
yeah.
at some point, I said, you know, for all we know, it was just some guy with too many coconuts that he had to sell. So he spread this rumor that coconuts are healthy for you just to sell coconuts more.
Yeah,
there's just so much information,
right
misinformation, and it's not even misinformation because a lot of it is people actually believe it.
Right. But you have both sides of the issue, and you don't know which one to believe.
There's just so much conflicting information about spiritualism, about science, everything. Everything is convoluted with too many theories. But
anyway,
but does that go back to this hearing everyone out thing?
Yeah, you still should hear everyone out. But again, what I'm saying is when you talk about hearing everyone out, you're saying is let's get all the radically different theories out there in the open. Let's get them out there in the open. Let's hear them all. Now, if two guys just, you know, have a nuanced difference, well, you know, we can go into those details later on. But at least let's get the contrasting theories out there and find out, okay, this guy says A, this guy says B, this guy says yes, this guy says no. Let's hear these guys. Let's see what their arguments are and what they're shooting at each other, trying to kill the other guy's theory. You know, so let's listen to them. And I don't care if they do some ad hominem in there in between. You know, you can just
disregard it.
Yeah, disregard it. Close your ears at that. But let's listen to what these guys have to say. But when you censor one guy and say, you know, then we got politics rolling. Then we have a problem. And that's this fella, you know, he comes in there, Antonio Sebastian, and he says the following, which bringing back to the subject, he says, a corrosive worldview. Materialism is the doctrine that only matter is real, and it's now enforced with all the power of the state. And that killed me because I said, first of all, you know, I'm saying it's all matter. It's all materialism. There's nothing outside of materialism. Only matter exists. You know, concepts don't exist. Spiritualism doesn't exist. And we can't apply the word exist to anything which comes out of the mind. You know, that's something we create. We can call it create. If we're not talking about in a materialistic sense, we can say I'm creating ideas. That's fine in that context only. But you can't say that you know, my thought exists, my mind exists, my soul, my conscious exists. That's
well, it depends on how you define it.
Yeah,
mind
but
could still be the ropes in my brain.
Yeah, but again, what we're talking about is if we're going to use the word exist in a physical in the physical context or in the scientific context, which what I mean in a way that you can use it consistently, you can only say that physical objects exist. You can say a dog exists, you can say a tree exists, or a rock exists. You can't say time exists, or mind exists, or conscience exists. That's where we can't use the word consistently, rationally.
Yeah, a lot of people would bristle at consciousness doesn't exist.
Right, I know.
Be like, what do you mean? You're not conscious? Am I not conscious?
Yeah, or no, worse. The universe doesn't exist. What do you mean the universe? Yeah, because the universe is a concept. It's not the universe. Universe, matter and space. Space is a concept that means nothing. You can't say matter and nothing exists. Well, matter exists, but not nothing.
Well, the way I use the word universe is just the matter.
Oh, yeah, but that's not what the word universe is typically.
Of the matter is
especially with relativists. Relativists say the universe is expanding. Okay, which of the two? Are we talking about matter exploding like a hand grenade, or are we talking about space expanding? You know, space expand, then we got to put you in the asylum. Okay, and that's the point. The point is that, you know, that you can't talk about concepts as if they exist. Okay, so
with spiritualists, they also kind of bristle at materialism. It's like they think. Yesterday, I was watching videos about chakras, and the guy was talking about chakras being in like the fourth dimension, and they're the gateway to the ethereal realm and stuff like that. And
because he hasn't come across the rope.
Yeah, but in my head, I'm like, why do you need to bring that stuff up? Like, it's okay, I don't mind it, but it's like, do you really need that to understand what's going on? To really understand what's going on?
Because they're trying to give you a basis for why they have their thinking.
But you'd think that it's doable with materialism. Like, is it not enough to say, you know, your organs are opening up? You have to call it chakras and bring in, you know,
new
magic,
words, or like concepts.
Like they say it's the opening to the ethereal world, because I mean I'm still gonna keep trying it to see what they're talking about. I'm like you, I want to test it to see what's actually going on. And they talk about like hallucinations and stuff when you do it right. And I'm like, okay, assuming there are hallucinations, right? Or you hear things, or people are talking to you, does it really have to be supernatural?
Right, concepts.
You have to invoke the supernatural. Can't it just be that there are conditions in your brain or your throat or wherever you're doing it that create these sensations or feelings or results, whatever you want to call it, without tapping into these irrational, you know, fourth dimension and ethereal plane and another world? It's like, do you have to go to that level?
Well, I think they have
to understand what's going on.
I think they go to those levels because they have no explanation based on matter, on objects. If they had a basis for matter, for them it'd be much easier, and it would say, oh look, it's all rational because it's all founded on matter. But since they don't have that, they have these particle, quantum world, space-time, and that kind of thing, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, 26th dimension. So that's all they have. And so they say, well, how can I incorporate what the scientists have found, you know, the singularity and the space-time and all this stuff we can't see? How can we incorporate that in my philosophy?
Well, hold on.
And that's the problem.
There's another issue to that where there's this professor that I was watching, he said it kind of nicely, where at some point when the feeling is like so awe-inspiring, even with God or when you're talking about the universe, it's so awe-inspiring that it kind of lends itself to religious language. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to talk about, you know, crazy stuff like that. Yeah. To kind of make it's the only accurate language for that kind of stuff.
We're so puny and the universe is so big, so ununderstandable.
It's so amazing that you kind of end up speaking religiously.
Yeah, it's like beyond knowledge. Yeah, so you have to relate to it in some way.
I mean, with these chakra opening things, the way I understood it is it's so awe-inspiring that you have to talk about it like it's another dimension.
Okay.
It's like when you eat something so delicious. The other day, like a month ago, I was eating peanut butter. I'm like, there has to be a God. There's the only way that this could taste so good, and it kind of is that part. It's just so too awe-inspiring.
Okay, look, we'll leave you there. We'll probably take up on this. We haven't exhausted the subject for sure. I got a couple more things to say, so we'll continue with that tomorrow. And then on the third day, I'll go with what I was supposed to talk today. Okay.
And on the third day,
we'll see you next. We'll see you tomorrow then. Same time, same station.
What did God do on the third day?
On the third day, He created. I don't know what He created.
Day of Christmas.
We'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.